right. Welcome, everybody. We'll give everybody just a second if there's any stragglers who want to join live. Although it's perfectly fine if you just want to wait for it afterwards. I'm actually working on a way to record the audio from this directly to my hard drive. Right now it just gets streamed, but hopefully here soon I'll get it recorded so that I can put it up as a podcast as well. That way, if anybody wants just the audio only, it should be a little bit easier to obtain. All right, let's get started with a little bit of security. I know you all love security. Everybody loves security and everything that comes about it. And actually, this is a really interesting piece of security because what it's going to do is really... The security bug really isn't that big of a deal. Well, it's actually a big deal, but it's easily migrated and patched. There's patches for every major Linux distribution out there. That's not the problem. The problem is how these things can affect your company and how you need to look out for it. So in open source, there's a lot of stuff that says like open source is more secure because there's more eyes. This is acceptable and this is good. I would say that there's also a current obscurity also makes things harder, but it's not, obscurity isn't a good form of security. And being open source, you should be able to provide better security from a code base. But that doesn't mean that it will be perfect, and B, that there's not other things outside of the code, like supply chain attacks. So anyways, let's look at this first one. Let's transition on over here. All right. So as you can see here, this is a heap-based buffer overflow in SUDO. The big reason it's a big deal is it is in SUDO. And this actually came out a week and a half ago. I didn't cover it last week because there wasn't a whole lot to cover at that moment. Your distributions are up to date at this point. I know that at least Ubuntu and Opensource have released, and I'm sure Red Hat has released ones for their Fedora and Red Hat. So I'm pretty sure at this point everybody has patched their sudo. But a lot of stuff has come out of this. So this is the initial CVE. You can read it, links in the description. But let's move on from this because this actually released a lot of people talking about security in open source projects. The first that we're going to talk about here is the Google open source blog. It's a really good blog. If you haven't gotten on reading it, I highly recommend that you stay up to date with it. I personally think that this blog goes to show how out of touch Google is with just pretty much the rest of the world. Okay, that is actually a little freaky here. Okay, up over in. I actually have this green screen. I didn't tell it to green screen, but I guess that OBS automatically saw that it was a green screen and decided to... Yeah, I haven't done anything with it. It's just my webcam. So it must automatically see the color green. Anyways, sorry, I just noticed that. If you want to see why I have that, I have an episode on Kubernetes services coming out tomorrow. It's all produced, it's all done, it's uploaded to YouTube. So when it releases, it should be out in HD instead of that horrible standard that it's out in for 3 days. It like processes the HD for like 3 days. That's coming out tomorrow. Already scheduled. And I use that green screen. Anyways, so they released a no prevent fix, a framework for shifting the discussion around vulnerabilities in open source. It's a really good read, but I do think that it shows how Google is slightly out of touch with possibly the rest of the world. A lot of open source projects are maintained by people that aren't paid. And what they basically want is to shift the onus of security onto the open source projects. This is really why I think it's out of touch is this is really what the distributions you pay for do. This is what Ubuntu does. The onus is then put on them to provide you with a secure pipeline. So not only do you mitigate supply chain attacks, but you also mitigate these types of things. So this is why now I know a lot of people will use it straight from GitHub or things like this, and I get it. But their big takeaways with this was very much increasing the amount of work for the open source developers, which I think there'll be a lot of pushback because the open source developers are already working hard to provide something to the community for free. If you've ever worked on an open source project, it's very much a work of passion or love or whatever you want to call it. And it also takes a lot of work. You'll see a lot of people that get burned out on supporting their open source projects. So I think that if Google wanted to go along with this, they need to have some way of supporting those projects. And they do call out that this is only for what they consider critical. But again, it's what they consider critical open source projects or critical software. And so again, this is maybe a little out of touch, at least from what I've seen. That being said, it is a very good read, and if you get nothing out of it, there's 2 repositories that I highly recommend you check out that's talked about in this. The first is, well, not this. This is the actual bug. I put a link to it only because it's actually very interesting to check out how easy it is to make a mistake like this. Not calling out the person that made this commit because 1, it was like 10 years ago. And 2, it's called learning from your mistakes. They're not really mistakes as long as you learn from them. I've written way worse code, I'm sure. And this is in C, so yeah. More importantly, the projects I was talking about was the Open Source Security Foundation. This is supported by a lot of large companies. One of the ones that I wanted to point to here is specifically is this scorecard. This actually goes through and basically gives a score to your repository or to your code. So this, I might actually make a video on using this because I haven't used it. I only came across it this last week. It looked really interesting to use. And so, yeah, you should check it out. And they have a bunch of other projects. I only quickly glanced over them, but they have a bunch of other things that try to help the open source security. So basically, it's just trying to help the open source security. And Microsoft, I'm not sure if AWS, but Google, Microsoft were some of the big ones. There were some other big ones that are also helping here and investing in here. So anyways, cool. You should check it out. Moving on. So that was our big security topic. No more security. I won't bore you guys forever with security. There wasn't any other major things. There's always malware. There's always phishing, so watch out for that. Nothing really interesting, though. Intel releases its first desktop graphics card in over like 20 years? I don't remember when the last one was because I'm not sure I was born when they released a graphics card last. So they actually finally released a graphics card. I only bring this up because their latest processors have some really awesome machine learning hardware acceleration for machine learning. And so I'm actually very excited. This graphics card is crap. It's not great, and it's not for like a gaming warehouse. It's like for a small business computer. So it's not designed to be a competitor with the 2070 or 3070. It's designed for something else. So this graphics card itself does not make me excited, but the concept that if Intel can bring its hardware accelerated machine learning that it's done really well with its processors into graphics cards, I will be very excited. And I'll be one of the first people to get one of those. Probably not because I still haven't gotten my 3070. I am trying, but I still haven't gotten it. Anyways, I will try to get one of these as fast as I can to when they do release one that's more geared towards machine learning, so that we can test it out, see how it does, and see, yeah. So, anyways, that's why I'm excited about it. Other than that, it's fun to make jokes about how long it's been since they made a graphics card. That being said, another piece of hardware that I'm excited about, I have already asked them to notify me. I will be getting one of these. I have a video coming out with a Pi cluster, hopefully in a week or two. And I want to make one with the compute module 4. That's the Raspberry Pi little compute module. And I think this supports up to 4 of them. And I'd love to make a cluster, maybe only 3. I'm not sure. Anyways, I'd love to make a cluster for machine learning. I think that the Raspberry Pi 4 actually has enough to run Kubeflow well on. And so that's what I'm going to first try. If that fails, then we're going to do something more federated. But you'll get to see some videos on that as I try to do it. All right, with that, I wanted to point out Ubuntu Core 20 is now available. So if you aren't familiar with Ubuntu Core, I really like it because it's a very, very small version of Ubuntu for embedded devices like a Raspberry Pi, and is pretty much what I standardly use on a Raspberry Pi if I just want something to play around with, because it also has Ubuntu's packaged everything. So if you need a package, Ubuntu packages probably everything, pretty much the world, the internet. So it's very nice in that regard that you have a very small ripped down package that also is easy to extend with whatever you need. All right, so that is it for our hardware. I was looking around the cloud this week, and honestly, there wasn't a whole lot in cloud that happened that I found that interesting. Now, don't get me wrong that there wasn't anything. I'm not saying there was nothing that happened in the cloud. There wasn't anything that I found particularly interesting for our channel. Now, there's always little things being released and updated, and so you should always be up to date on some of those little things. But in general, I don't announce when AWS expands a service to a new region. They do that like 20 times a week, and that would be like an hour of me just sitting here. So anyways, I apologize if I've missed something that would be important to you. I try to cover anything that's majorly important. The only thing I really found was EventArc, that it was made... It did a public beta in October, I want to say. But it just went general availability. And basically, EventArc it allows developers to route events to clouds. So basically, it makes you be able to use Cloud Run, which is their serverless backend. And it allows you to do event-based Cloud Run. So you can have an event-based service if you wanted to. So it's actually a really cool little service, and I would highly recommend checking it out if you're into event-based stuff. But basically, it allows you power your cloud off event-based stuff. So that's probably why it's called EventArc. I think it's probably EventArc. I've always called it EventArc, but I think it's EventArc. That's why I pause every single time I say it. When I first saw it, I wanted to call it EventArc, but it's probably EventArc. They should capitalize the A or something, put a little, I don't know. Naming is hard. Naming is very hard. All right. Let's move on. This is just when they announced it. Yeah, October 29th is when they announced it. So if you're wanting to know, this has more about what it is. Yeah. Along with Google, they released their fourth quarter for the first time. So this was the first time that they've really released. I found this fun because they lost a butt ton of money. My goodness, I did not realize that's more money than I care to. Yeah. What, 5 billion here? I think it was like 15 billion was the loss, or I don't remember exactly. Anyways, it's a lot of money. So if you want to compete in the cloud, it costs a lot of money. That's the takeaway from here. All right. I did check on AWS, and if they had released their Apache 2 distribution of Elastic, so far it's still not there. I checked just 10 minutes before the stream started, so this is the open distro for Elasticsearch. So I will let you guys know as soon as it hits, so all of you that are wanting to find it, I will have a link to it. But as of right now, it is purely still just the things that they standard had there, which was like Kibana and stuff like that. So anyways, I'm still watching it. I'll let you know as soon as I find anything there. I always love finding things in the mail when I actually know. Joe Elliott is a fantastic engineer. I actually know him personally. He lives close to me, which is strange because there's like maybe 100 developers that live close to me. I live kind of in the middle of nowhere and not a big hub, so it's very strange when I see somebody I know. Anyways, he's a great guy, fantastic developer, and he, I guess, is behind the Grafana Tempo. And I haven't hung out with him recently because of quarantine, but yeah, anyways, Grafana Tempo is a newish project released by Grafana, and basically is just a high scalability distributed tracing. I said high scalability distributed. It doesn't really make sense, but basically it's just a tracing backend that kind of works with all of their other stuff. So maybe we'll get this going, and maybe we'll give it a shot in one of our clusters, and maybe I'll get Joe on to talk about it. I don't know. He hasn't responded to me. I was like, hey, Joe. Anyways, moving on. So this is kind of some of the open source projects. So anyways, Grafana Tempo is released. So if you're looking for high scalability tracing backend, this looks like an awesome project. I haven't gotten to touch it yet. But yeah, if you do a lot of tracing, you might want to keep your eyes on this. It looks like Docker is donating Docker distribution to the CNCF. If you don't know what Docker distribution is, it is the repository that powers Docker Hub, or at least the core aspect of it. I don't think that it's all there. But Docker distribution is the Docker registry. So that is what it is. And yeah, the code is right here. So we can check that out. So this is the code for Docker distribution. So anyways, it's getting pushed out to the CNCF. It is as a sandbox project, but they're saying that they're going to try to fast track it through because it is a stable product that has been used in Docker for a long time. So this is going to give community control over some of those things. So that's really cool to see, and I'm excited about that. All right, this was something that came out of left field from Microsoft. I only put it on here. It's not cloud native by any means, but it was interesting to see them release here was the ESE, the extendable storage engine. This is something that I guess powers a lot of Microsoft stuff, and Microsoft is notorious for just releasing some stuff. Anyways, it allows... yeah, you should check it out. Basically, there's a whole bunch of confusion between the Jet Red and the Jet Blue engine, and a lot of people think that this is the Jet Red engine, which was what was in Access that nobody liked, but this is actually Jet Blue. I'm not really a Windows developer, so I don't understand a whole lot of that. Anyways, it looks kind of interesting. So if you're into some of this, check it out. I don't know that much about it. All right, so this next one comes from our community. Thank you very much for recommending stuff that you've used and bringing it to my attention to talk about. So this is Octant. Basically, this is a tool to help you understand what's running on your Kubernetes cluster and kind of visualize the stuff out. So it's actually quite easy to use. I have used it before. And as you can see, it gives you some really nice dashboards that allows you to see what deployments, what pods, replica sets. Basically, it gives you a web dashboard of kubectl. So imagine being able to see kubectl from a web dashboard. That's what this is. So thank you for recommending it. This is actually a really good one. Should have been on last week's because it's kind of a replacement for those command line tools. And anyways, yeah, so pretty cool. This next one also came from them, and it's called KubeView. I think a lot of people know what KubeView is. It's kind of some of the same thing. It's a Kubernetes cluster explorer. It allows you to visualize your Kubernetes cluster. So if you're wanting to see kind of what your Kubernetes cluster looks like, this is a tool that you can use. And if command line tools aren't your forte. All right. Yeah, so anyways, yeah, that's what both of these, this Octant and this KubeView are, these projects are. So they're also open source projects. So if you want to support an open source project, these, I'm sure that they would love your support. They are both Go projects mostly. This also has a lot of Vue, so Vue.js because the front end. But yes, I don't like front ends. Nobody asks for my support on front ends. All right. So here's another one. This isn't a new project. It is just released its 9th version. I think it's version 9, 13 days ago. So what this is Vitness is a distributed MySQL Kubernetes clustering system. So basically it lets you cluster and scale out MySQL horizontally. And I think big things like YouTube, I think YouTube started this. Let's see. We can read. Yeah, YouTube. So yeah, YouTube since 2011. So if YouTube uses it successfully, I think you can probably use it successfully. So it is licensed under Apache. It changed from BSD to Apache 4 years ago. Anyways, yeah, so it looks pretty cool. I haven't actually used it, but managing databases is an interesting project, and this is part of the CNCF. So, anyways, written in Go, and that would be it. All right, so that is pretty much it for this week. Let me know what you guys are like seeing, whether it's the projects, whether it's the security, whether it's the commentary on it, and whether you'd like to see some other things. Leave me comments either on this video or any of the videos of some projects. Do you help with a project? If you do, I'd love to give it a shout out. So if you're helping with a project, one of these, it can be in the CNCF. We cover a lot of stuff in the CNCF. It doesn't have to be in the CNCF. So if you're working on a project, an open source project, and like to get a shout out, go ahead, leave it in the Discord, or go ahead and leave it as a comment on this video, and I'll make sure to give it a shout out and learn a little bit about it. If it's a really cool project, I might even make some whole videos on it, and that would be pretty cool. Anyways, that's pretty much it for me today, guys. Thank you all for joining. I appreciate it. I appreciate your guys' support. You all rock. And I look forward to hanging out next week. See you guys. And sorry for those of you who just joined. We could talk again, but you can watch it. It will be uploaded into and stay on my YouTube channel. It's on the live stream, so if you missed and are just joining, don't worry. You can go back and see me talk about the SUDO bug and what it means for open source, which was at the beginning of this. I think that I might talk about that again next week, just a little bit, because I have some more thoughts that I want to refine before I want to bring them up. But yeah, generally the problem of securing open source. It's an interesting problem. All right, guys, have a fantastic week. I look forward to seeing you next week. And remember, I have a video coming out tomorrow on Kubernetes services. So it's kind of an intro to Kubernetes services, as well as like kind of digging into what they actually are. Also, question, leave me a comment. Do you guys want this in podcast form? Do you just want to hear my voice and not see the web pages? Because if you do, I'm working on trying to record the audio of this at the same time so I can upload it as a podcast. So if you're wanting that, let me know and I'll work harder on it.